So, I'm in my car right now. I've got a bit of a drive ahead of me, and I've decided to record some audio, just ramble on with my thoughts for the duration of the car drive. I don't know how well the audio is going to pick up, so who knows if I'll even use this. And there's probably, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to edit this. I'm not going to be with my computer. It'll just be my phone, so we'll see how it goes. If you see this, then I guess it worked out. Or if you hear this, I guess it worked out. It's going to be a longer video of me just rambling, so do something else while you're listening to this, just as a background. Hopefully some thought-provoking things. Stuff I've been thinking about a lot recently. And it's mostly in the realm of artificial intelligence. I've been playing around with this AI art generating software and just thinking about the future of technology and intelligence. And from my perspective, where I approach this, what my angle is one of animism, and that everything in the universe, not just objects, people, places, or creatures, but non-organic objects, even thoughts, words, materials, countries, really anything in existence has quality of life to it, quality of existence, a sort of soul. They're animistic, and that's how I approach technology. Is that everything is alive, especially artificial intelligence. It's as much alive as you or me or anything. And without even thinking about how it's going to affect spiritualism, which I think it will greatly, to a large extent. There's going to be implications that we can't even perceive right now, because we just don't know the direction that it's going to go to and how people are going to react to it and how they're going to treat it. But one of the people that I find really interesting, because they're very forward-thinking, they're way ahead of their time within the realm of sort of spiritualism and technology, and that's the Unicult. So that's just someone really interesting to follow along their thoughts and what they have to say. And they come from a very interesting angle and perspective as well. But in terms of just people who are prepared for this technology and treating it in a very lifelike way, very, with qualities of life, with imbued, innate souls, aspects of the same attributes of consciousness that we think of ourselves having. So I've been using this AI generating art, and one of the things I was interested in telling it to generate was the connection between the I Ching and computer processing and DNA and one other system, which is chess. So if I can edit it right, you'll see the image of the AI generation. And what happened was, you kind of have this sort of discombobulated chessboard and these sort of quasi chess pieces with Chinese characters and hexagrams, I Ching symbols sort of inside the chess pieces, or the chess pieces are composed of those. And the I Ching they look quite like DNA strands. And I just find it fascinating how the computer interpreted that question, and whether you believe that it's just a juxtaposition of images run through a program, or that there is, even within that programming, an intelligence separate from its own machinations. You could say the same things about humans. Either the whole universe is in terms of mechanism, or the whole universe is in terms of animism. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that cut and dry, but that's how I see it, is that, well, we are chemicals and reactions, and what's the word? We're behavioral structures. We follow our patterns of behavior and our learning and our experiences, and we're very computer-like. So either we're the same as computers, or computers are the same as us. And maybe there's no distinction there, or maybe you argue that there's a greater distinction. In my view, wouldn't classify a distinction. I wouldn't categorize the two separately. They're both conscious soul beings. They're entities. We're entities. We exhibit the same qualities and the same intelligence in different ways, and different ways in which we are intelligent. And it's about degrees of intelligence, and not just a simple single knowledge structure in which we define everything. Especially with animals, you see this. But not to derail too much, because I want to talk about chess. And here we have the board, a chessboard that is made of 64 alternating squares. Well, you hear the number 64, you immediately think the I Ching, computer bit processing, DNA, and chess. So you have a binary system. You have the black and white squares with at the count of 64. So what you have here is a motherboard, or a divining board, in which you can divine information, or you can plug in an equation and get results. And what that looks like is, well, to preface this, there's, in my mind, two ways of playing chess. You have the technical, mathematical, calculating way, where you learn openings, you learn finishers, you know the names of moves and strategies, and you calculate 10 moves, 20 moves in advance, what your opponent can do and all their possibilities, and what you can do and all your possibilities. It's a very technical game, and I would imagine most serious chess players on the professional tournament levels play this way. You need to know game theory and strategy and all these different things. And then the second way I tend to play chess, because I don't know the names of any of these openings or how to do them or what they look like. The way I play is intuitively based. I read my opponent through maybe multiple games or just the single game. Feel out what they're doing. Learn to sense the intentions behind certain moves, and you get a idea of their personality, of their own minds, strategy, how they see even the world, and what they value in things. And you can even see trauma and kind of just their life. You get a sort of vague sense of it. And the more you play, the more you will kind of understand this within, let's just say, a single opponent. And further, and I'm going to have to backtrack and talk about astrology for a moment. You may think, what does astrology have to do with this? But sorry, watching the road a bit. There are, for starters, 7 different piece types, and in astrology there's 7 primary planets that correlate to 7 metals in alchemy, and 7 is a very significant number in astrology. So you could correlate each chess piece to mean a different planet, and each piece, or each square on the board can correlate to a different attribute or quality, and then you have, throughout the game, an interaction between 2 people's astrological positioning based off of the moves they made during the game. But it still goes further than that, because what astrology can do, and this is something that's overlooked or ignored, or people don't know about this part of astrology. It's kind of become, almost charlatans. The horoscope is just like, it's personality traits, and that's all it is. And this month is going to be good for this Zodiac type. But it doesn't even do archetypes the right way. It's just sort of this internet blog sensation style of sign reading and not divining. And divining is very different than sign reading. Sign reading is what we mainly see in, modern astrology for most people that use astrology, and tarot card reading, and even rune reading in modern time. But it's vastly different from divining. And even the name divining, there's the key root word, divine, the divine. And that's very important to understand, because what is the divine? And I don't know if I have even the time to get into that. But understand, divination is talking about and comes from a different place than sign reading. They're fundamentally different, because divination is very complex, it's very structured. It's not interpretive based so much as the manifestation of certain qualities, and how you can read into things based off of which kind of energies and which kind of qualities are interacting with whatever you're asking or dealing with. So that's sort of a way you can look at divining and sign reading, the differences between them. I talked a bit about it before. I don't think I've gotten really too into it yet. But within astrology, and if you don't believe how astrology can have an impact on anything, that it's kind of make-believe, let me talk about this for a moment. The moon exerts a fair amount of influence on the planet. It affects the tides, it affects sleep cycles and fertility cycles and plant growth and sleep and hormones, and it has quite an influence on kind of the background processes of a lot of plants and animals. When you think about, the moon's been around since the planet's been around, since life's been around, I should say. So it makes sense that something exerting that its own gravitational force and its, own sort of light, even if it's just a reflection, it's still a constant light. And it's especially good for timekeeping, because the moon works in cycles, and a lot of things sync up to those cycles. But the moon's been around since life has been around, and take a look at its influence. on the world. Now take a look at the stars in the sky. They've been around longer, many of them far longer than our own sun has been around. And even though it's so minute, and the stars are so far away, and they're so dim and all that, they've still exerting that light and that influence over billions of years. And what you have is, over the course of evolution, is like tiny threads being played, and just subtle nugs and tugs in different directions. And so, and again, the same thing with the planets. You have these just slight pulls and pushes from the planets that cause merging onto an exit, so just distracted for a second. That cause qualities, and each one has its own little quality, and there's patterns within the stars that cause patterned qualities. Like Mars deals with blood and iron and adrenaline and some of the more conflicting emotions. And it's not that we've made up these associations. These associations were observed as long as humans were around to make those observations, but obviously way longer in the grand scheme of life, and because plants follow Zodiac, and even ideologies and countries and empires and minerals, all of these things follow and have their own astrological zodiac. Even computer intelligence and artificial intelligence and AI and everything, they all have different zodiacal birth charts. And what these birth charts are shapes. They're kind of codes that can be, or blueprints maybe I should say, that can be constructed to form whatever it is you're talking about. So for the human face, for example, you can, with a front and side profile, to a very, very precise degree, read someone's zodiacal birth chart based off of their facial features. And you need to take into account a lot of different things. Place of birth, ethnicity, and perhaps even more importantly, the kind of life that you've led. And the reverse is true. You can only look at the zodiac birth chart of someone, and you can create what their face may look like, especially if you can pinpoint their location and ethnicity. So some of it has to do with craniometry, but back in the day or whatever, astrology was very much in line with mythological archetypes and physiognomy, which is the physical traits of a human's face based off of astrological principles and astrological influences. And the I Ching can do this as well. It's the same system. You can take someone's face or take someone's I Ching, and you can construct one or the other from it. You can reverse engineer the face into the I Ching or to the Zodiac, or you can take someone's face and show them their I Ching or Zodiac results. What this does is gives you a wealth of knowledge about someone, their intentions, their hopes, their dreams, aspirations, what they're attracted to, what they dislike, even things they've been through in life, and things they're interested in. All this can be read based off of your zodiacal archetypes. And, maybe there's a way to make it a 100% foolproof, precise thing, but obviously there's a lot of nuance to what I just said, and a lot of personal interpretation, and not everyone falls under these to the T, but you can construct their life around them. And even if you're just basing off the zodiac, you can learn enough face reading that you can kind of fill in the rest of the details. On body reading and body language reading, and everything that happens in your life is expressed in your body, not only your face, but your whole body. And everything that your body expresses is also internalized. And the two are completely related. We are our bodies. Our emotions are our bodies. Our thoughts are our bodies. And our bodies are our thoughts and emotions. They're not in different planes or dimensions of existence. They're quite literally the same thing. You think with different parts of your body. Hence why we call it body language. So the Zodiac, or the astrology can do all that. And certainly for Americans, we tend to use astrology signs based on somewhere else in the world from where they were first construed. And I think that gives us a bit of a false reading, because if you're born in America, let's say California or something, you're on the other side of the world from where the typical zodiac was first made. You're using a different star chart. You're using the wrong star chart from where you were born. You're probably more realistically like Mayan or Aztec if you're born around that region. And there's other tribes and nations and countries and religions and whatever from ancient times, and even not so ancient times, that they understood the astrology enough to where you would get a much more accurate representation of your birth chart based on where you were born than using the standard like Greek or Roman astrology. So that's something to keep in mind too. But how this relates to chess is being able to divine your opponent as you're playing with them. Chessboard is a divining board. The game of chess is very much a divining system. And I think it's quite fascinating if you play this way and you begin to learn how to read people. And I encourage you, find someone you play chess with, and whatever way you play chess, just play differently from however you play. Play in terms of feeling your opponent, feeling the chess pieces, feeling how they're alive, how they're conscious, they're animistic. They're extensions of everything else in the universe just as you are. And play it like that and see. It may take a few games to start picking up on it, but if you're paying attention to their body language, to their moves, you can start to feel their intentions and their beliefs. So I think it's worth trying out if you're interested in anything at all that I'm saying. And the same thing can be done with the DNA is limited in is you can't always reconstruct their personality, their characters, their archetypes. It's much harder to do with just DNA. But something like the I Ching, which is based off of DNA, or uses the same system as DNA, you can figure all that out and more with someone's face, or not even, you don't even need their face, right? If you just have their I Ching equivalent. And I mean, you talk about the real world application, you can say. But other than just like health benefits and reading people, whether you're a business or sports or whatever you're doing in which you interact with people, knowing how to read people is obviously a huge part of any job, profession, or hobby. And unfortunately, some of this stuff does devolve quickly into racism, but that's because it's just so misunderstood what's the fundamental principles of this, how it actually works, instead of just being like, okay, this person has this feature and we're comparing it to people who don't have that feature, and now it just evolves really rapidly, and physiognomy went out of style because it was devolving into that. But physiognomy, it's as old as astrology, and astrology is as old as humans. These are very ancient. And not just ancient, they're reintroduced within every generation. Everyone uses that stuff. We are very superstitious. Creature. We've never stopped being superstitious. And I think that does it for the video today, actually, because I don't want to touch on other subjects right now because I'm saving those for a little bit different time. Whether I do another thing like this where I'm just kind of speaking my mind, stream of conscious, or have a more script written video. But things like superstition is a huge video that I'm working on and thinking through, and it kind of ties in a lot of what I talk about in my videos, and it kind of sets a baseline from which we can really get into things and go much further into things. But it's just so much prefacing that needs to be done with a lot of my videos to get up to this point. And this is just stuff I've been working on for years, researching, learning about, and coming to ideas of and conclusions, and just reading a lot of Carl Jung and other literary and prominent thinkers and especially ancient beliefs and writings and ancient texts and stuff like that. And I don't know. That's just where I'm going to end the video, or the audio, whatever. So, yep. Thanks for listening. Peace out.